Today we're going to continue Wishtree. Chapter 28. The moon bathed us, all in cool blue light, as we awaited Samar's nightly visit. She came out in her robe and slippers, sitting on her blanket. She waited patiently as the babies scrambled over to see her. Around her neck, she was wearing the beribboned key that Bongo had given her. Where's my crow friend?" she whispered, as the ewes somersaulted in front of her. She looked up into my branches, and I was glad I'd instructed Bongo to hide on Stefan's roof. Right on schedule, Bongo flew to Stefan's bedroom window. She settled on the sill. Samar's fabric scrap dangled in her beak. Carefully, she tapped on Stefan's window. Nothing happened. I told Bongo to be as quiet as possible. We didn't want Samar to see what we were up to. Tap, tap, tap. Louder this time. Still nothing. Stefan apparently was quite a sound sleeper. Bongo looked at me. Her eyes said, "Now what?" She tried again. Tap, tap, tap. Samar started. "What was that?" she asked. Fortunately, Harold distracted her with an attempt to fly onto her arm. It was more an awkward hop than flight, and Samar giggled. Good going, little Harold, I thought. Bongo dropped Samar's wish onto the sill. Tap, tap, tap. Nothing. She paced back and forth in front of the window. Then she froze. Her eyes glinted in the moonlight. Bongo leaned close to the glass and performed her very best fire engine siren. By the time Stefan's window flew open, Bongo was already back on the roof, watching her efforts pay off. Stefan peered out. He rubbed his eyes. He noticed the scrap on his sill. Frowning, he held it up, catching the moonlight in order to read the words written on the fabric. He looked down at the lawn. There was Samar looking up at him, surrounded by an odd collection of baby animals. "You rock," said Bongo. Chapter 29. When Stefan eased out the front door, he was wearing red pajamas and a gray sweatshirt. His light brown hair was mused, his eyes blurry. The flashlight he was carrying sliced through the darkness. The babies turned toward him and froze. Their eyes glowed like little moons. Flash squealed in fear. Stefan clicked off his light, and Flash seemed to calm a bit, although he was definitely hiccuping. "Hey," Stefan whispered. "Hi," Samar whispered back. Stefan sat down next to Samar. The babies watched with interest. "Why do they come to you?" Stefan asked. "I don't know. It's like magic." "No," Samar shook her head. "I'm just quiet. They like that." Bongo flew down to Samar's shoulder. "Hello," he said to Stefan, mimicking Samar's voice. "Wow," he said, "that's amazing. Yesterday I heard her imitate a doorbell." Stefan grinned. "She gave me this key," Samar said, holding it up. "I don't know what it's for. A diary or a jewelry box, maybe. Or the world's smallest door," Stefan joked. For a while, everyone fell silent. Even the baby raccoons were still. At last, Stefan held out his hand, revealing Samar's wish. "I found this," he said. Even in the moonlight, Samar's blush was visible. She looked away. "I'm sorry about that word," Stefan said softly. "The word on the tree. It wasn't us." Samar nodded. "My parents aren't bad people. They're just afraid of things," Stefan shrugged. "So are mine," said Samar. "I heard my dad talking about moving. If we can find a safe place to go." She gave a sad smile. "If there even is such a place." "I'm sorry," Stefan said again. The babies, sensing Stefan could be trusted, began to tussle and romp. Harold and the smallest ewe searched for bugs. Rose Petal and her brothers, hot buttered popcorn, played tug of war, with a long piece of grass. I'll miss them, Samar said. I hope you don't move, Stefan said. A light blinked on in Stefan's house. I should go, he said. If my parents see me, I should go. Night, Samar said in a whisper. Oh, the things I want to say to those two. I wanted to tell them that friendship doesn't have to be hard, that sometimes we let the world make it hard. I wanted to tell them to keep talking. I wanted to make a difference, just a little difference, before I left this lovely world. And so I did. I broke the rule. Stay, I said. Chapter 30. The animals gaped at me in astonishment. Even the youngest babies knew about the don't talk to people rule. Bongo darted to my top branch. Red, she cried in a strangled whisper. You can't. Oh, but I can, I said. What have I got to lose? But as I was saying, I returned my attention to Stefan and Samar. They were staring at me, jaws dropped, eyes wide, as frozen as flash had been not long ago. We're dreaming, Stefan murmured, right? At the same time, Samar asked, Is that possible? Pinch me, Stefan said. Samar complied. Definitely felt that, Stefan reported. Maybe it was a dream pinch, Samar suggested. Excuse me? I interrupted. I have 216 rings worth of wisdom to convey, and not much time. Stefan reached for Samar's hand. If it's a dream, he said, at least it's a cool one. And so I began. Chapter 31. I haven't always been a wish tree. It happened in 1848, long before I was surrounded by concrete and cars, when I was just a few decades old, still a youngster by Red Oak standards, no longer a lanky sapling. I was solid and strong, but not anchored to the earth the way I am now. This was a time, like many other times, when hungry, desperate people sailed on crowded boats to settle here. Many of them ended up, as they always seem to, in my neighborhood. The blue and green houses were brown then and filled to overflowing with new arrivals. Sometimes the newcomers were welcomed. Sometimes they were not. But still they came, hoping and wishing, as people always do. One of our new residents was a young Irish girl named Maeve. She'd voyaged across the Atlantic with her 19-year-old brother, who died of dysentery during the trip. Their mother had passed away shortly after Maeve was born. Their father, when the children were 9 and 12. Maeve was solid and plain, but when she smiled, it was like sunshine peeking through the clouds. She had a deep laugh, and her hair was a brilliantly red as the finest autumn attire. 16, alone and penniless, Maeve shared a tiny room with 5 other immigrants. She worked night and day, cleaning and cooking and doing whatever she could to stay alive. Maeve soon discovered she was gifted at caring for the sick. She had no special knowledge, no secret remedies, but she was kind and patient, and she knew how to soothe a fevered brow with a cool cloth as well as anyone. What she did know, she was willing to learn. What she didn't know, she was willing to learn. As time passed, word grew of Maeve's abilities. People brought her their sick piglets and their lame horses, their coughing children and fretful babies. Always she explained that she wasn't sure she could help, but since people in the neighborhood were too poor to go to a doctor, they turned to Maeve. And since people believed that she could help them get better, Maeve tried to live up to their hopes. When she succeeded, and even when she didn't, patients and their families would leave small tokens for her. A whittled figurine of a bird, a hairpin, half a loaf of bread. Once someone even left a leather-covered journal with a tiny silver key that opened its lock. When Maeve was out tending to someone who was sick, people took to leaving their thank yous in my lowest hollow. It was still a fresh wound, just a couple of seasons mended, but because it faced the house where Maeve roomed and not the street, it was a safe place to leave a token of gratitude. That's when I realized that hollows can be a good thing for people, not just birds and animals. Little did I know just how good. Chapter 32. The years passed and Maeve became as connected to the neighborhood as I was. Even as newcomers from other lands added their music and food and language to our little part of the world. No matter where people were from, Maeve cared for them as best she could. I grew tougher, my older limbs less pliable, my shadow longer. More trees and shrubs joined me, but there was plenty of sun for all of us, and we never wanted for water. I'd hosted many families by then, mice and chipmunks in particular. My closest confidant was a young gray squirrel named Squibbles. All squirrels' names begin with the letters S-Q-U. There he is. Squibbles was especially fond of Maeve, who often fed the little squirrel table scraps. Privately, Squabbles and I worried about Maeve. Along the way, Maeve had seen a suitor or two, but nothing much came of those flirtations. She had friends aplenty and work to do from dawn till dusk. Still, she seemed lonely. Sometimes Maeve would sit on the front porch watching happy families stroll past, and her eyes would well up with tears. At night, she'd gaze out an open upstairs window, and her sighs would float to us on the breeze, melancholy as the call of a mourning dove. After Maeve would sit at the base of my trunk and write in her journal, now and then she'd read passages aloud. She spoke with the Irish countryside fading into fog. She spoke about her family she'd lost. She spoke about her secret hopes and fears and longings. She had love to give, and no one to give it to. Maeve adored early mornings, when the world was bathed in mist and the sun was still a promise. She would lean against my trunk and close her eyes and hum a tune from her childhood. One day, the first day of May, Maeve joined me at dawn. To my surprise, she reached up to my lowest bough and gently tied a scrap of blue stripped fabric in a careful knot. "I wish," she whispered, "for someone to love with all my heart." That was my first wish, and the beginning of many more. Chapter 33. As the weeks passed, the piece of fabric on my branch drew many comments. Some of the folks in our neighborhood, the ones from Ireland, would nod knowingly and smile. To them, Maeve would simply say, in her lilting voice, "That's my raggy tree. She's not a hawthorn, but she'll do just fine." People who'd come here from other lands, and there were many of them, would frown at the rag, or even reach up to remove it. Maeve would warn, "Don't you be touching my wish now." Patiently, again and again, she would explain how in her old home, leaving wishes on a ragged tree was a time-honoring tradition. Now and then, people would ask Maeve what she'd wished for. She'd tell them the truth, and with a sigh and a weary smile, nothing much. Just someone to love with all of my heart. Nothing much at all. Sometimes people would laugh. Sometimes they would roll their eyes. "A wish on a rag won't bring you love, dearie," they would say. But usually people gave Maeve a kind smile, a squeeze on the arm, a knowing nod. And then they too would ask if they could add a wish of their own. Thanks for listening today.